thank you for an atmosphere of overflow. We thank you, God, that there's only one direction to go with you, and that's up. You level up, God. And so there's full and then there's overflow, God. And so we thank you for the overflow in our health, God. We thank you for the overflow in our lives, God. We thank you for the overflow in our careers, God, in our families, God, in our finances, God, in our spirituality, God, in our mentality, God. We thank you for overflow, God. That you don't stop at good enough, God. That you exceed the expectations every time, God. We want your overflow, God. We want more of you, God. And we thank you for that today. Amen. Good morning, Freedom.
Good morning.
I am just excited that God is just so strategic. And I can be honest and say, I really had no idea until last week what a TED Talk was. Really. I didn't grow up in the United States. I grew up moving around every 2-3 years with my parents. They were both in the Army. And so all we watched on TV was AFN, the Armed Forces Network, okay? And the Armed Forces Network does not have TED Talks on it, okay? And so the past week or two, I've just been trying to figure out, what is a TED Talk? What am I supposed to do? It's not a sermon, it's a TED Talk. And so I watched and I Googled TED Talks and I read some topics and I went to the Freedom Fellowship Facebook page and looked at the previous videos to watch other people's TED Talks. And I was like, oh, so it's pretty much what we call in the Army the SME, the subject matter expert, the SME, the SME. And so I'm supposed to get up here and talk about something that I am professing to be one of the subject matter experts of. And then I was like, now that creates another issue. What am I the subject matter expert of? I'm young, I'm still learning a lot of things, I do a lot of things, I try a lot of things and fail. And I've been successful in a lot of things. And if I don't know anything else, I do know that God is faithful. Amen. And so if just for a moment we could entertain the thought that I am the subject matter expert on being the exception to the rule. Being the exception to the rule. Last weekend, Dr. Wise and I, we went to Jamaica. And we went to Jamaica because one of the staff members at Thrive Christian Academy was getting married. And we worked a 42-week school year, went straight into summer camp. So we were excited to get a break. And as soon as I stepped off the plane in Jamaica, my phone went off and I had this text message. And it said, hey, it was from AT&T, and it basically was like, hey, you are now on an international data plan. And all I had to do was to go to settings and turn on international roaming, right? So I've never considered the fact that I needed this international data plan. I've never turned on roaming, even though I've seen that setting 1,000 times. And I just went through the motions and did it. That blessed me on the way back, when it sent me a message saying that I had returned, back to the United States and I can go in and turn it off. But I didn't, I just left it on. And that has just sat with me all week. The fact that this plan has always been available to me. That my phone has always had a feature to activate international roaming. It's just that I couldn't activate it and take full advantage of the service until I was in need of it. That in the United States of America, the place that I call home, in my comfort zone, where everything moves the way I want it to move, flows the way generally I want it to flow, I did not have the need to be roaming. But just by me stepping on a plane and taking flight to a destination away from my home to a foreign place, this service kicks in. But it's always been there. I just couldn't activate it until I left from home. And that has been my experience with Thrive Christian Academy. That there are things that I have discovered about myself and about God that without stepping into the purpose and the promise and the vision of Thrive Christian Academy, I wouldn't have found out. That I'm stronger than I thought I was. That I have a lot more resilience than I ever thought was imaginable. And I wouldn't have found it out without the challenges of trying to step into God's will and be faithful to something God called me to. That I didn't have a need for like that kind of roaming with God. That the way my life was flowing on a day-to-day basis, God and I were cool. We were fine. I knew God to be a healer through other people. I knew God to be a provider through other people. I knew God to make a way through other people. But it wasn't until I stepped into the will of God for my life and opening a school that I'm not qualified to run, don't have a background in education at all, and trying to pursue these $1,000 campuses with 2 students registered, that I realized that there was always something within me, and it only took for me to step into the will of God to activate it. I am grateful. I'm so grateful that I have come to know God to be faithful. That I have come to know God as a provider for my own self. That I have come to experience God as a keeper. And that I have learned that God is committed to his visions. God is committed to his promises. So if there's anything that God is calling you to do and you do not think you have the capacity to do it, I'm here to tell you through my testimony that you do. That those services are already in your body. Everything that you need to accomplish it is already in you. It just hasn't been activated yet. But as soon as you step out of home, out of your comfort zone, and step into another octave with God, you realize that this Christian roaming service is where you want to be. It's where the overflow is. That you don't really need roaming service when you're just going through the day-to-day. But when you get in the will of God, you're going to need God on a whole nother level. An entirely different octave. And that God is so cool that he extends this opportunity for you to live in the overflow, for you to be roaming with him. And when you turn on that roaming service, it's just like telephone services. You have different access points with God now. You're on a whole nother level. And the typical and standard rules that everyone else functions with are no longer applicable to you. No longer applicable to you. I am an Army chaplain by trade. And I opened an outreach center in a small little 700 square foot building that isn't any larger than the front of this theater. And so when God hit me up and was like, hey, so we're going to start a school, I had no idea what to do with that. My background isn't in business. My background's not in education. I like school, but as you heard in my bio, I like to get out of school early. So I take a whole bunch of classes, do a whole lot of work, and I'll roll on up out of there, get my degrees, and go on about my business. And so when I started Thrive Christian Academy, I started with 2 first grade students. And the first day of school was September 3rd, 2013, exactly 2 weeks after I gave birth to my son. And so I got up that morning, I went to what was formerly an outreach center, and I walked in at about 6:30 with my son in tow, and I set up a kind of cot space for him. I fed him, birthed him, and anybody that has a 2-week-old infants know they sleep all day, so it worked out. And I lied him down, and then I was at the door to greet my first grade students. And we went through that entire school year, just going through the motions of learning together. Me saying, God, what am I supposed to teach today? What am I supposed to do today? What is this going to look like today? And so in that, I kind of built my business plan while I was already in the process of running my school. And one day I sat down at the table to just type up a parent handbook because I didn't have one and I figured I needed one. And in the handbook, I wanted to put the vision of Thrive Christian Academy. And I was like, Spirit, Holy Spirit, what should I put on this paper? And then I was obedient. So I wrote K through 5. The vision is that we're going to be K through 5. I had 2 first grade students now, K through 5, that we were going to have a playground. The building I didn't have a playground. My students wanted a playground, so I was like, we're going to have a playground, we're going to have a computer lab, and we're going to have a library. That's what I put in, like the second month of school with my 2 first grade students. And we moved to that school year, and just in the past couple of weeks, I've just really been reminded of how Thrive came into being. I've been doing a lot of interviewing, and in that interviewing process, people ask a lot of questions at the end about how Thrive was created. I read on the website, how are you able to do that? And it really just points to the fact that Thrive Christian Academy has literally been the exception to the rule. All right. I started with 2 first grade students, and at the end of the school year, God reminded me of the vision that I put in our parent handbook, of a computer lab, of a library, of a playground. And so I started making phone calls to figure out how I could get those things in the building that I was in. And it just wasn't working out. It wasn't working out. And so I Googled educational school buildings for rent, right? And the only thing that came up was a school building in Conyers, Georgia, 1151 Flat Shoals Road. And it was 35,000 square feet. And in the description, it described it as a 3-story educational building with a computer lab, not one playground, 2 playgrounds. It had a full library, and it had 32 classrooms and a full gymnasium across its 35,000 square feet. And I said, God, you're real funny. And I printed it, and I set it on the desk. And by the second semester, I had 2 first graders and 2 second graders. And I set it on the desk, and I went to church the following Sunday, and the speaker was a gentleman of the name Jermaine Smith. And so he came in, he preached, and at the time I was on the ministerial staff there, so I greeted him, I spoke, shook hands, did all that. And Monday morning I returned to school, and again, the paper was there on the desk that I had printed the week before. And God was like, call. So it was a LoopNet listing, so I just called the little generic number that was on there, and a gentleman answers the phone, and he says, hi, this is Jermaine Smith of Smith Realty. How can I help you? And I said, hi, Mr. Smith, because I still wasn't thinking. My name is Monica Taylor. I have a school in Lithonia, and I'm interested in the property. He said, tell me a little bit more about your school. This is a great facility. It's 35,000 square feet. And I mean, he ran the whole manner. He went on for about 60 seconds. When he finally stopped, and he was like, tell me about your school. I was like, well, I have 4 students, 2 first graders, 2 second graders, and we just started a few minutes ago. And he said, wait a minute, Ms. Taylor, you said you have 4 students? And I said, yeah, I have 4 students. And he's like, well, I have some other properties that are smaller that churches are renting out that might be more applicable. And I was like, well, no, I'm not interested in those. I'm calling you about this property. All right. And he said, well, Smith Realty. And he went into this long spiel about the type of clients they look for and, you know, the type of things it takes to get qualified to get into a building of that size and how long you have to be around. And he asked me to have a business plan. And I said, I don't have any of that. I have 4 students, a parent handbook, and God told me to call you. So I'm just being obedient. If the answer is no, cool, but at least I can tell God that I was obedient. And he said, let me get your contact information, and I'll reach out to you. And I said, okay. So I gave him my contact information. I got the phone, still not connecting the dots between the two. And so about a week later, Spirit was on me and was like, hey, you need to call about that property again, because of course I hadn't heard from him, right? I only had 4 students. So I called again. And he answered the phone again. He said, hey, this is Jermaine Smith of Smith. And this time it kicked. And I said, Jermaine Smith, did you preach at First St. Paul a couple of Sundays ago? And he said, I did. I said, yeah, this is Reverend Monica Taylor from First St. Paul AME Church, right? And I called you about the building on Flat Shoals. And he said, you know, Ms. Taylor, it's interesting that you called me back. I spoke to the pastor about you, and it's crazy, but he actually wants to talk to you himself. And I said, I'm sorry. He said, yeah, he actually wants you to call him. I said, okay. But again, when you're in the will of God, the standard rules don't apply. Right. So he's a realtor. He lists the property. People call him, go through him, he gets a commission. That's how you get in the building. And so he was shocked, and I was shocked that the pastor wanted me to call him, right? So I called the pastor. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Ooh. And he's like, is my understanding you're interested in my building? I'm like, sure, I'm interested in your building. And he's like, yeah, how many students do you have? Tell me all about your school. Well, I have 4 students, 2 first graders and 2 second graders. My background's not in education, but it's going to be great. God told me to find a building that had a playground, and I ran through my parent handbook, and you know, he laughed. He left when I was finished with that conversation. And he said, Miss Taylor, you know, there's 32 rooms. What are you going to do with 4 students? And I said, I don't know. We're just going to move from class to class every day of the week. And he laughed. And by the time we got off the phone, he said, do me a favor, Miss Taylor, put together a business plan, send it to me. And when you send it to me, I'll schedule you for a tour. I said, okay. So I put together a business plan. I sent it to him. And that Friday, I went to tour. When I went to tour, I could tell that he really wasn't interested. It had to be God on him, making him give me the tour, because he was just kind of pointing out things here and there. But I was excited, Kevin. I was excited. And so I'm walking the building, and I'm just like, "Ooh, God's gonna do something awesome. God's gonna do something awesome." Because that's what being on that Christian roaming plan will do for you. Right. That you'll stop, like it'll give you the ability to ignore the other people that just don't get it. So if I take time to focus on the fact that you're not giving this tour and that you don't even think I have the capacity, then we're in this spiritual debate, right? I don't want to be debating with you. I'm just trying to do what God told me to do. And so I can enjoy the excitement of being on this roaming plan while he's on this little typical domestic plan. That's okay with me. That has absolutely nothing to do with it. And that's one of the benefits, really, of just stepping out of your comfort zone into what God has called you to do. That it will put you on a level that other people won't understand, but there's other people people on that level too. And so it will force you to shift the people that you have around you because you'll stop talking the same language. We're not even on the same service provider. I can't even call you anymore and get a conversation through because you're not on this level. And it's not that you think you're better than someone else. They just don't have access to the same numbers you can dial up now. They can access God for these kind of things. The hey God, make traffic move so I can get to work on time. But when you're in the will of God, you can access God for like, take me with 4 students to 35,000 square feet. You can do that. You can do that. And so I went through the tour. At the end of the tour, he said, Miss Taylor, the price point is higher than I know what you can come up with. So this is what I'm going to do. You seem to be pretty confident. So I'm going to set it at $7,000. Now I was paying $700 in rent where I was and struggling to pay that. He said it's going to be $7,000. And if you come up with your first month and last month as your security deposit, I'll give you a lease. I said, okay. He said, I'm going to give you 14 days. I said, okay. And I left, right? Extremely optimistic. Blindly optimistic, some would say. And so I left. And that was on a Friday. That weekend, my homegirl was in town, Ebony. We went to undergrad together. She's an active duty officer in the Army. I linked up with her Saturday, and she was just like, yo, what's been going on in Atlanta since you graduated? And I was like, yo, I toured this place. I showed her my business plan. I showed her the business plan. And we were just talking casually, catching up. She told me all about what she had going on. I told her about what God was up to. And she says to me, oh, this is going to be cool, Monica. This is a big deal. You should talk to my dad about it. And I was like, huh? Okay, I'll talk to your dad about it. So Sunday, I met up with her dad and I talked to her dad about it. And Tuesday, Ebony was flying out. We linked up and she handed me 2 checks. A check from her for $7,000 and a check from her dad for $7,000.
Come on.
I had no idea what to do with that. Because again, I'm used to being on the domestic plan with God. God and I have always been tight. I pray to God about everything, but I never experienced God in that kind of way.
All right.
Yeah. When you realize that you and God have moved to another level, it causes you to stand in awe of God all over again.
Right.
Every year that Thrive has been in existence, something has happened that has caused me to literally pause in my tracks and stand in awe of God. That 2 people giving me $7,000 apiece was just the beginning. You know. So I called the pastor and I was like, hey, I have the money. And he was like, how'd you get that money that way? I was like, I don't know, God worked it out, you know. That's none of your business. You didn't think it was gonna happen, but look at what God did. And so I signed a lease. I signed a lease on my mom's birthday, the 14th of July, 2013. And I called my mom and I was like, hey mom, I want to show you something for your birthday. And my mom likes nice stuff, you guys. She's a cool person. She likes nice stuff. So she's like, oh, what is it? You know, and I was like, oh, it's gonna blow your mind, you know. And so I gave her an address, and her and my brother pulled up at the address. And on the campus, there's the huge educational building, and then they had a daycare attached to the church. So there were these double wide trailers. And so my mom pulls up, and she pulls up on the side where the double wide trailers are. And she parks. And I'm standing in front of the educational building across the street. And so she gets out the car, it's raining, my brother has an umbrella, so she's standing there, she's like, come on and open that door. And I was like, you need to cross the street, you know, you're on the wrong side of the street. And she was like, what are you talking? I was like, come to this side of the street. So she comes across the street, I unlock the front door, and she's like, Monica Taylor. Shamir, that's what she calls me. That's my middle name. Shamir, what have you gotten yourself into? This is what she asked me. And I was just like, oh, this is gonna be our new building. And she was like, what are you gonna do with all this space? And I said, I have no idea, but God has worked it out, right? And so she was kind of the first kind of test run on how crazy this was, you know. My mom's good at that. She's very accomplished, extremely confident, and she's very honest. And she's like, this just doesn't make sense, Monica. But I will say that my mom has always been the type of mother who, once I say that God told me to do something, it doesn't matter that it doesn't make sense. She just goes with the flow. And I'm grateful for that. And I say that to say that God will allow people that are close to you, that you love, that you respect, that don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. They don't understand why you quit your job. They don't understand why you moved across the country. They don't understand why you're just giving up everything and sacrificing everything to get into the will of God and do what God has asked you to do. But God will also bless those people to support you. That it doesn't make sense to me, but if you said God told you to do it, I can join you in prayer in that. And that's the beauty of this international enrollment, that you can invite other people to join. It's like WhatsApp. You can send an invitation, right? So I didn't know what WhatsApp was. I got in Jamaica and I was like, oh, you have to invite people. It's not their default. Stay with me. It's not their default. That as long as they're here in the United States, they don't need WhatsApp. But because I've gone somewhere where I've had to get on an international plane and I'm in need of WhatsApp, that next to their names in my phone it says, invite to WhatsApp. That when God levels you up and puts you on a roaming plan, that you have the opportunity to invite other people to share in that, to extend those services to them that they didn't even know they needed. My mom was like, what is WhatsApp? I don't know, just download it. My brother's like, what is WhatsApp? I don't know, just download it so we can talk, right? God will expose, God will use you stepping into God's will. God will use your new relationship with Him to invite other people to be in relationship with Him. It's just so beautiful how it works. So nevertheless, I have this building. It's the end of the school year, and I'm trying to figure out, God, what are we going to do in this building? Are we really going to rotate classes every day? I don't have a staff, but you told me I'm going to have kindergarten through 5th grade. What's up? So I signed the lease July 14th, and then school year's over, of course, and a young lady named Miss Sandra Harvey shows up at my front door in my school. And she knocks on the door, I go to the door, she says, hey, are you Monica Taylor? I was like, yes, I'm Monica Taylor. She said, my name's Sandra Harvey. Do you have a student named Stacey Dennis? I said, I do. He's my 1st grade student. He just graduated. She said, I was his teacher. I taught him pre-K at a previous academy, and his mom posted some pictures of some of the work in his national test. I no longer work there, and I'm coming because we want to work for you. And I said, we, because she was standing there by herself. She said, yeah, it's myself and my 2 best friends. We're all from Jamaica. I teach pre-K. Miss Barrett teaches kindergarten, and Miss D teaches 1st grade. And we all want to come work for you. And I said, I don't understand what you're saying. I don't have any students. She said, I'm here because I'm supposed to be here working for you, and I'm coming, they're coming, and when we come, the kids will come. And so I have a building. Unconventionally, standard rules do not apply to this, how I got this building. And now I have a staff. I don't have any students for them, but I got a staff. They came in, they signed contracts. Lord, bless them. Bless them. They signed contracts, and I did not have students for them. And so a couple of weeks after they signed their contracts, I get a phone call from this young lady named Ashley Shears. And come to find out, she's at that school too, and she teaches kindergarten 3. And at the time, my son was turning 1 and my daughter was turning 3, but they were going to the church's daycare. And so she came in to interview. When she got finished interviewing, I said, I really don't have any 3-year-olds. I don't have a need for K3. My church has a daycare. I don't want to be in conflict with them or compete with them. So thanks for interviewing, but no thanks. And she was like, okay, well, can you just keep my resume on file? I was like, sure. And I moved on. The following Thursday after her interview, my church had a meeting, and they voted to close our daycare.
All right. Wow.
Which left me stranded with a 1-year-old and 3-year-old that needed somewhere to go. I have the space, right? Because I got a lease for 35,000 square feet. But before I can get to her, that was a Thursday, VBS was on that Friday. I was in Sam's Club Friday morning shopping for VBS, and my phone rings. I answer the phone, and it's Miss Shears. And she says, hey, Miss Taylor, I just woke up, and I just wanted to call one more time to see if you were in need of a kindergarten 3 teacher. And I said, actually, as of last night, I am. And I hired her. And even though Ms. Shears was the last person to get added to the squad, she was the first class to fill up in Conyers in the fall. First class to be full. And so God is cool like that. God does cool things like that. And so we move into this 35,000 square foot building on the first day of school. We have 53 kids. I don't know where they came from, but they came. 53 kids in 35,000 square feet, 32 classrooms, and a full-size gym. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Stay with me. And so, but conventional rules don't apply, right? When you get on this next level with God. And so we're in this building, we're doing our thing. I'm learning business. I went down to the office, I applied for business licenses. They took my money, all this cool stuff happens, Mr. Glenn. And then one day, kids started transferring into the school from other Rockdale County schools because we happen to be the only African-American academy out there now. So people are coming. They're like, what's happening over here, right? And so one week, a citation officer shows up, right from the start, shows up, and I get all these citations. I don't know where it's coming from. I'm trying to figure it out. So I go to court and for this citation, and I show the lady everything that I filled out to be in the building, and she says, well, you can't be in this building. There's a policy in Rockdale County that says that because this is on a church property, in order for you to be in this building, you have to be owned and directed by the church. That it can't be a separate entity. That's the rule. That's the policy. But on this cool roaming plan that I'm on with God, Thrive Christian Academy is the exception to the policy.
All right.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh. So I'm panicking because I'm like, now where are we going to move to? Now we have 86 kids. Where are we going, right? And she says, the policy says that you have to be out of that building and you have 24 hours to get out of it. And so I went to the school and Googled attorneys because I was like, what am I going to do? And I acquired an attorney, and he sent a letter in asking for a court date. And I went to court, and the judge read the policy to me, but God made us the exception to the rule. And she says, the policy says that you can't be in this building, Miss Taylor, but it's my understanding that you have 80 plus kids in the building. I said, yes, ma'am, I do. She said, what day, if I gave you the option, what day would you be able to move? And the first day that came to mind for me was December 21st. It was the last day of the semester. We would be out of school for 2 weeks. I figured, hey, we can figure out something. So I say December 21st. And she says, all right, I'm going to let you stay in that building until December 21st. December 22nd, you need to turn the building back over. God worked that thing out because my attorneys were really intimidated that week leading up to court. And then they were saying how this judge had a reputation of not bending the rules, not making exceptions to the policy. But I'm trying to get you to understand that when you're moving on a God vision and a God promise, that vicariously, because God is on your team, you plus God is the majority. And so the rules are no longer applicable. It's like N/A, not applicable to you. And so this judge that has these lawyers intimidated, when you stand in the confidence of what God has called you to, God will cause people to do things that they don't traditionally do. And so she granted us to stay in the building until December 21st. I stood in front of my staff the next day and I explained to them that we had until December 21st to find somewhere else to move to. I didn't know where we were going to go, but we had until December 21st. When I released my staff from that meeting, one of my teachers, Ms. Barry, came up to me and she said, Miss Monica, Miller's Military Academy used to be on my church's land. They moved out last week. They terminated their lease. My church is looking for someone to take over the building. And she gave me a phone number for a gentleman named Mr. Campbell. I called him. And on December 21st, we had Winter Awards Day that morning. School ended at 12 noon. The parents helped us load up everything that belonged to us into U-Hauls. And on the 22nd, we unloaded this stuff in Lithonia, Georgia. That we didn't miss a beat. Our students didn't miss a day of school. And that their transition was so smooth. We didn't lose any kids when we moved. That's unheard of. That a business moves 3 cities over and your parents say, hey, I'm driving. Because I'm committed to this vision. I'm committed to the God promise. And that's another cool thing about being on this Roman plan with God, that God will cause other people to do things that they wouldn't normally do either. That God will cause people to recognize that you are the exception to the policy. You are the exception to the rule. That standard conventional thinking just is not applicable. We opened and we started in Lithonia, and I was excited about that. And before we could get into that building, there came a point in the road where I couldn't carry our payroll. And I tried everything and worked out everything, and I stood before my staff. THRIVE is an acronym. It stands for truth. Back then it stood for truth, honesty, respect, integrity, victory, and excellence. I stood in front of my staff, and I'm a pretty confident person. And so it took a lot for me to stand in front of them. And I was in tears and somewhat embarrassed and extremely humbled. And I just told them, with us about to move next week, I had to pay a deposit for the Lithonia location. And I'm not sure I'm going to be able to run a payroll tomorrow. And the reason why it took me so long to tell you is because I've tried everything to come up with this money. And then our payroll was about $28,000 and our rent was like $6,500 because it dropped from $7,000 to $6,500 and we still had to pay that last month of rent. And so I just didn't have the money. So I stood in front of my staff and I said that. And the next morning I came to school and I was standing at the front door greeting parents like I do every morning. And one of my parents walked up to me and she said, "Hey, Miss Monica, can I see you for a second?" And I said, "Sure." And so we stepped into the library and she said, "Thrive has really been a blessing to my son." Her son with special needs. "Thrive has really been a blessing to my son, and I just want to give you this. God told me to give you this." And I said, "Okay." And it was an envelope, and I just kept it moving. I went back to the door. I kept greeting, and around noon that day, my phone went off because I had an alert set on my phone to run payroll. I set alerts for everything, and the alert went off. It was like payroll, and I was just like, "Oh Lord, Jesus, I don't have it." And when I dropped my head to pray, I noticed the envelope because it was sticking out from under my laptop. And I was just like, man. And so I opened the envelope. In that envelope, there was a money order for $36,000. So on this roaming plan, there's levels. And the first time I leveled up was when God blessed me with 2 checks for $7,000. That was a big deal for me. God had a parent, because she had to have done it the day before, because it's in the morning. Where can you get $36,000 money, right? God had a parent the day before. When I'm standing in the hallway, embarrassed, telling a staff how I don't have the funds to pay them, trying to figure out how we're going to get out of this rent situation if I can't even pay the last month's rent. God had a parent at the same time standing in a bank. Not getting a check now, because a check, it would take days to clear. God had her to get a money order for $36,000. Who has $36,000 extra dollars just sitting in that account? But there's a scripture that says something about my God has God has limited resources. And God will connect you with people on this roaming plan that I'm talking about. God will connect you with people that have unlimited resources. And she walked into the school the next day and handed me a check for $36,000. And I didn't even know that she had handed it to me. But when I dropped my head to pray, I went to the bank. I cashed the money order. I deposited the cash and ran my payroll.
All right.
And that day I changed the H in Thrive from honesty to humility.
All right.
So today Thrive stands for truth, humility, respect, integrity, victory, and excellence, because that was a humbling that I've never experienced. I'd experienced domestic humbling. Mom, can I borrow? Dad, I need you to mow my grass. Hey, can you help me change a tire? That kind of humility is a little different than standing in front of a staff of 15 people saying, "I know you need this, but I don't have it." On this roaming plan, you'll experience things upgraded to positive and sometimes negative, but I learned the power of humility that day. It's a lesson that has blessed me and Thrive Christian Academy every day since then.
All right.
So yeah, that happened the second year. The third year, we're in Lithonia, and we end up we go into partnership with this school that specializes on special needs people. We move over to North Hairston. So this is our third campus now. And we're there for a couple of months. I still have the lease in Lithonia, and in November, I'm like, man, I've been paying this rent in Lithonia. We're not in the building. I need to get rid of this lease. And so I called and I scheduled an appointment with the landlord of the Lithonia location, and I said, can we meet on Tuesday so that I can terminate the lease officially and stop paying this money? He's like, sure. So we scheduled a meeting for Tuesday. On Tuesday, I get ready to leave. I pack up my kids. They're not used to leaving school early because we were there 6:30. And Zoe's like, oh, Mommy, we're going to rehearsal today. And I was like, what rehearsal? And she's like, I have dance rehearsal. And my oldest daughter, if you've ever met her, she's very much like an emoji. She has all the facial expressions of an emoji. And so, she's excited. She's got this bright face emoji on, and I'm looking like, so no, we're actually going to a meeting to get rid of this lease, this bill that mommy has. And she just bawls out. She's crying, she's hysterical, and that's not her normal disposition. She usually goes with the flow. But for some reason, she was adamant about getting to this rehearsal. And so I called and rescheduled the meeting. And they're not available any day that week, and they're not available till the following week, Tuesday. So I pushed the meeting back a week because my daughter wants to go to rehearsal. And I'm annoyed, I'm irritated, because I want to stop paying this bill, but it's my daughter. And she's an emoji, and she has gone through 22 emotions about this rehearsal. So I take her to rehearsal. We show up at the rehearsal place only to find out that the rehearsal was canceled. So I'm extremely annoyed now. I'm extremely frustrated. And now I gotta pay a whole nother week in this building full of a rehearsal that didn't happen. Oh, but God. We were scheduled a meeting for the following Tuesday. That week, Thursday, after chapel, I walked into my office, and the lady we went into business with, her husband and her brother, who both work for her school, are standing in my office saying we have to leave the campus. That they don't agree with the way the business is going. Our school side has grown larger than theirs, and they no longer want to be in business with us, and the business is terminated. So in the middle of the day, I'm escorted on campus. Their teachers come into our portion of the school building, take over our classrooms, and she's walking around offering my teachers contracts to work for her. Because according to them, she stated, I'm no longer in business because I don't have a location. So Thursday, I'd send an email to my parents. I said, hey, we gotta move. Don't panic. You can pick up your kids if you want to, or pick them up normally like you do after school. But I need some help. If y'all could meet me at the campus at 3:30 to help me load up some stuff, that'd be great. I go pick up and rent 3 U-Hauls. I'm only one person. I can't move them. I call for 2 of my staff members to meet me there, and we put the U-Hauls in the parking lot. I call the police. And I said, hey, I need to move some stuff out of a building. Could you meet us there just to make sure things go smooth? Because I smell a lot. And I love the Lord. He heard my cry. But I'm kind of funny when it comes down to my kids and my students. So come on, Mr. Officer. Come on, be on campus so everything can be copacetic. And so my parents meet me there. We load up the entire school on a Thursday. It's actually on a Wednesday, and I call the steward, the chairman of the steward board at my church. I said, hey, can we use the church tomorrow? I need somewhere to put my students for a day. And he said, sure. What's going on? Everything okay? I said, everything's fine. And so I tell all the parents, I send out an email, hey, we won't have school tomorrow on Thursday, but you can drop your kids off at this address. It's my home church. The entire staff will be there, and we're going to use tomorrow to move into our old building. The building that I was supposed to come off the lease that Tuesday and would have came off the lease that Tuesday. Had my daughter not acted the fool as he said. So we show up Thursday in Lithonia to unload. Our kids are in the church safe and sound. We show up to Thursday to unload. The water's on, but we don't have no power. The power is off. And so I called Georgia Power, and I'm like, hey, how much does it cost to cut this back on? I pay the money to cut back on, and the lady says, I'm sorry, Miss Taylor, but we can't put you on the schedule till Monday. And I said, no. I've only moved my students for a day. I need the power to be back on tomorrow. And she said, there's just no availability until Monday. What I can do is put you on the standby list. It's very rare that commercial openings open up, but I'm going to put you on the standby list anyway. I said, okay, so now I'm thinking, the kids gonna be here, what are we gonna do? So I got some floodlights. And I called Mr. Mario, our bounce house guy, and I said, Mr. Mario, I need to borrow a couple of generators. And so Mr. Mario shows up with these generators, and we connect the floodlights. And in my mind, I say, by the time school starts, the sun will be up. So it's enough light in the classrooms for us to get through the day. We just need to get through the morning with the floodlights. My God. And so I plug up these floodlights. Friday, everyone returns to our Lithonia campus. Friday morning, we get into the hallway. And we have this thing that we do called hallway devotion. So we're in the hallway singing, Lord, you are good and your mercy endureth forever. The sun is coming up, and I'm like, hey, let's do it again. Let's do it again until the sun come all the way up so there's enough light in the rooms, Miss Commodore, right? And so we paused the song, and I was like, hey, run it back. So we do another run, and this time we played the 10-minute YouTube version. You know that Israel, there's different versions, Kevin. We played the 10-minute version because I was trying to give the sun time to rise. At least in my mind, that's what I was doing. So we played the 10-minute version of Lord, you are good and your mercy endure. And we're like, you are good all the time. And so when we finish, we do the Lord's Prayer and we dismiss to go to classrooms and the power comes on. Wow. Now the lady said the power wasn't coming back on until Monday. So in my mind, I was going to have to rent these generators the whole day and possibly even Monday depending on the time. But when we get through standing in the building that we almost gave up, all students, didn't lose a student, didn't lose a teacher. When we get through celebrating and praising and saying, Lord, you are good. People from every nation and from generation. Now it's K3 babies in this hallway singing, Lord, you are good. Now, from generation to generation, we worship you. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. We worship you for who you are. The power comes on. So some commercial person, the same way God was working out that bank situation the day before somebody that was on the schedule to get their power cut on, canceled their appointment, the appointment shifted to us, and what we thought we would need generators for, all we needed was to send up a good praise and worship. And that's why I say the standard rules aren't applicable, because the policy is that you got to go with your appointment. But here we are on Friday in the building that we weren't going to have.
That's it.
And the power comes on. God just has done those kind of things in Thrive so often I could sit up here all day. God has given 14,000. He's given 36,000. He's turned on power. He's kept us from being homeless 3 times over. And then God comes through and says, you're going to move to another campus. So I stand up at family orientation. I say, hey, God showed me this building. It's $10.1 million. I don't know how we're going to get it because I don't have 10.1 million. But God said this is where we're moving to next school year. And so I say that to our parents. And from that day forward, everything in my mind, I'm thinking, the building. That building. What are we doing now that we need to perfect before we move to that building? And what are we doing now that we're not going to be able to do that? Because I'm thinking like God is doing something. Yeah. And so I try to do it the conventional way. I contacted the realtor, and the realtor was like, Ms. Taylor, you can't view that property without a pre-approval letter for $10.1 million. Do you have that? I said, I don't. And then so I said, let me get creative because I don't really like no's. Let me call the pastor. So I called the pastor and left him a voicemail. He didn't come back, so I sent him an email. I emailed the pastor. I was like, hey, my name is Monica Taylor. I have a school. Boo, boo, boo. God says that your property is up for sale, lease, something like that, for sale. Is there a lease to buy option? And he replied and said, no, ma'am, there's not a lease to buy option, and you can't view it unless you have a pre-approval for $10.1 million. So now I'm like, God, how are you going to figure this out? Because I've already said we're moving. The next day, Coach Darrell walks in my building. He has an after-school care program. He walks in the building to pick up his after-school care kids, students at my school that play basketball for him, and he's in a suit. I've never seen him in a suit. Why are you in a suit? He says, oh, I just come from a meeting. I'm a commercial realtor. I said, really? I said, let me show you this property. Let me see what you can work out. So I give him the property, the address, and he calls the next day, and sure enough, he said, hey, Ms. Taylor, they won't let you on that property unless you have a pre-approval. Let me connect you with my loan officer. He sends me the stuff. I fill out the packet. It doesn't come into fruition. I'm trying to figure it out, but it's because I'm playing by these domestic rules.
Right.
I'm trying to do it the conventional way. And so God and I got to talking. And I was just like, God, you have me stand up and say this. How we going to decide? I don't qualify for this loan. What we going to do, what we going to do, what we going to do. And I took my kids on vacation, and Mr. Darrell calls me. He said, hey, Ms. Taylor, I'm calling about the property that you asked me about a couple of months ago. It was just purchased by an Indian congregation. They don't have a school, and they're looking to lease out the school building.
All right.
When will you be back in town so we can tour? So I went and toured the property, and God didn't give us $10.1 million. But God sent someone that had $10.1 million to buy what we couldn't afford so that we could lease it indefinitely. God does those kind of things on this international Christian roaming plan that I'm talking about. And so as I close this out, I really hope that me just talking about some of the things that were very impossible, some things that were extremely invisible, a $10.1 million campus that was intangible for me, only became available when I leveled up with God and got on that roaming plan. And the only way to get on that level with God is to fully commit to the thing that God has called and purposed you for. That I have access to God and a way to get around deadlines and rules, not because I'm perfect, not because I've done anything so cool, but because I've fully committed to pursuing this promise of God called Thrive Christian Academy. And I don't care how big or how small you think the promise is or what the thing is that God has called you to. My Freedom Talk, the purpose of it is to let you know that it doesn't matter how much money you're going to need. It doesn't matter what the qualifications are. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, what you have, what you do not have, that you don't have to be intimidated by the rules and the standards that are in place, that God will make you the exception to the rule just because you're committed to the promise. I thank God that I get to experience God on this level. And it's been contagious. That not only have I experienced it in this level, but everyone connected to Thrive Christian Academy has had the opportunity to tap in. And so if what I said doesn't implore you to step into it for your own sake, step into what God has called you to do for the sake of people that are attached to you. So that when you get on a level with them and their names show up on the screen, you can send them an invite. Hey, I'm experiencing God to do phenomenal things. I think you could benefit from it. Let me invite you here. With this Freedom Capital campaign, to go from a theater to raise $300,000 to buy your own campus and you're a new startup church, it doesn't fit the mold. But I have been up here explaining to you how once you get on that level with God, molds become irrelevant. Rules become irrelevant. Standard tradition and conventional methods of getting to success are no longer applicable. Amen? Amen.